It was a sight no one ever imagined they'd see. Not the fans, not the family, not even the folks who have been with the Brown clan for more than a decade. On a cold, tense morning, Kody Brown, the former proud leader of a sprawling plural household, entered a courtroom as a reality television personality no more, but as a man in legal jeopardy. The cameras were gone, the confessionals edited out, the cooing wives on the couch. This was not TLC, this was life, and real-life consequences were finally catching up. The docket read simply, Christine Brown versus Kody Brown, financial dispute, child support. But underneath those clinical words lay a narrative chock full of betrayal, heartache, and years of anger at long last coming to a head. Because Christine wasn't merely seeking dollars, she was seeking justice. And Kody wasn't merely standing up for himself, he was standing up for the reputation he's cultivated for years. If you thought it was going to get good when Christine packed her bags and walked, think again, because what happened in the courtroom was way more dramatic than anything TLC has ever aired. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may forever change how you see Kody Brown. The courtroom itself was unpretentious. Beige walls, soft lighting, the smell of stale coffee, and old documents hanging in the air. But the atmosphere? Tight, charged, emotional. Christine sat beside her attorney, head held high, eyes quiet but unyielding. Beside her, a fat binder full of papers, decades of bank statements, household expenses, and invoices. This was more than a woman seeking justice. This was a mother determined to fight for what she felt was rightfully hers and her children's. Across the aisle, Kody sat rigid in his chair, arms folded, jaw quivering. That loud-mouthed man with flared nostrils who made headlines on TV was no more. Someone smaller, cornered, sat in his place. His lawyer murmured something, but Kody didn't even nod. He was looking around the room, probably thinking about who had come to see him bring shame upon himself. And then, when the judge appeared, there was silence. Christine's attorney stepped forward. "Your Honor, today we are here to speak about years of economic disparity camouflaged by the name of family unity. My client feels Mr. Brown has abused joint funds to maintain one wife, while others, like her and her children, were left in the dust." Kody winced. What came next? Even the court reporter stopped and looked up. Because this wasn't about dollars, it was about betrayal from within. And someone was getting exposed. "Don't move an inch, this is just heating up." Christine's attorney opened the binder and presented a chart on a screen. Bar charts. Color-coded breakdowns of spending. Every single item budgeted and accounted for, from Christmas presents to private tutors to house repairs. One family, Robyn's, was given close to 80% of all family fund spending over a 5-year span. Christine's home, on the other hand, went years without upkeep. Her children wore hand-me-downs, whereas Robyn's children attended private school. Kody squirmed in his seat, his expression a combination of anger and confusion. "This is deceptive," he growled. "We all signed off on these things." The judge spun around. "Mr. Brown, your turn will come. This isn't a family gathering, this is a court proceeding." For a man accustomed to dominating the space, it was an unusual and abasing moment. Christine, always level-headed, remained silent. But you could sense the decades of stifled anger finally expressing itself, in the form of irrefutable evidence. Kody had imagined strolling into a small disagreement, but this courtroom was going to become a war zone. And the most unexpected moment had not even come yet. Stay tuned in, because the next name spoken left everyone speechless. The attorney hesitated, then uttered the name no one anticipated. Robyn Brown. Yes, Robyn, the favorite wife, was specifically called out in the papers. The lawyer described how several of the transactions led back to accounts that were held in common by Kody and Robyn alone, with none of the access being provided to the other wives, even though the funds were family money. In an instant, Robyn's position changed from uninvolved wife to potential financial co-conspirator. And that's when events took another drastic turn. Christine's attorney waved a declaration from a secret source, a supposed former family accountant or financial planner. The declaration claimed that Robyn not only had access to private accounts, but was actively involved in the decisions that directed money away from the other wives. Gasps circulated through the court. Kody flushed. "This is a smear campaign," he claimed. "Christine's bitter, and now you're bringing in Robyn as some kind of afterthought, because you need a show." But the judge wasn't amused. "What I see," the judge responded icily, is evidence of possible misrepresentation of funds. This court takes that seriously. You still thinking this was just a Brown family disagreement? Think again. Because now, it's not just Kody being questioned, Robyn might be summoned to testify under oath. And that's when everything could really come crashing down. On the sidewalk outside the courtroom, the media had already started to congregate. Local reporters and national tabloid channels stood shoulder to shoulder, cell phones at the ready, waiting to catch a glimpse of the former idolized plural family in full breakup mode. On the inside, the judge directed both Kody and Robyn to provide complete financial disclosures within 30 days, account statements, spending records, and asset statements. Christine's lawyer didn't smile. She didn't have to, because the message was clear. This wasn't a stunt, this was war. And it wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, about years of emotional labor, economic disparity, and one woman finally finding the courage not only to stand up for herself, but for her children, her dignity, and the unheard voices of every other wife who had been erased. We've seen Christine leave, we've seen Meri crumble, we've seen Janelle distance herself, but this courtroom moment, this was Christine taking her power back, legally, publicly, and unapologetically. As court recessed, Christine stood up first. She didn't rush, she didn't gloat, but she walked out with a calm power that said, "I've waited long enough." Kody, however, sat silent for a few moments, staring not at the judge, not at Christine, but down at the floor. For once, he seemed to be without plan. No words, no apology, simply a dense silence. The silence of a man who might have finally exhausted all defenses. This court fight isn't family drama, it's a reckoning. And what comes next could potentially dismantle the whole narrative Kody Brown has built over years. So let's get to it. Here's the big question. Do you think Christine is justified in taking this to court? Is Kody in the wrong for playing financial favorites? Or is there more going on here than we've been shown? Leave your thoughts in the comments. This tale is far from finished, and your voice has never been more important to this discussion. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next, because we'll be reporting on all the twists, every move, and every shocking revelation as this case develops. And hey, post this with a fellow Sister Wives devotee who's been holding out for justice to finally come knocking on Kody's door. You saw the drama on the couch. Now see it go down in court. This is just the beginning. They inform us that time discloses all things, but in the Browns universe, where feelings are fierce and secrets span decades, time has done more than just expose. It shattered the very foundation of the family Kody Brown once insisted was built on love, respect, and faith. And now, for the first time in the family's long, complicated history, those fractures have resulted in something irreversible, something very public, a courtroom. It was a gray morning, no different from any other in the middle of Flagstaff, but for Kody Brown, it was a turning point, a moment of no return. He walked into the courthouse looking calm, even somewhat amused, as if he were walking onto another set and not into a court fight. But this was not reality television. This was not a camera-ready admission or a family gathering where he could set the tone and exit when things became too authentic. This was court. And this time the regulations were not his. The case, officially a financial one, was so much more than figures on a ledger. It was a betrayal, a broken promise, a man who in the eyes of at least one of his ex-wives, had exploited not only her trust, but the very concept of family they once attempted to embody. Christine Brown sat silently only a few feet from Kody, her expression calm but inscrutable. To the public eye, she has long been the wife who finally mustered up the strength to walk away. That narrative barely covers the tip of the iceberg. Because behind all the smiles and cheerleading words on TV was a woman who had spent years sitting around watching her kids get less, watching her voice get overridden, and watching resources intended for the entire family flow quietly into a home she was not invited to be in. And now, Christine wasn't just walking away, she was fighting back. What made this moment even more chilling was the sheer amount of evidence her legal team brought forward. Years of bank records, credit card statements, wire transfers, and handwritten ledgers from back when the Browns still kept their finances old school. These weren't wild accusations spewed in anger. These were cold, hard numbers. The courtroom itself was tiny. No cameras, no stroboscopic lights, only frayed benches, dusty Venetian blinds, and the crushing burden of too many unspoken realities. But where it was lacking in brashness, it was rich in meaning. This room, on this day, was to be the war zone upon which two fundamentally different visions of family life were to collide, one of public harmony, and one of private dissonance. Christine's attorney started with a chronology, a plain list of transactions and dates that had appeared harmless initially, a wire transfer here, a purchase there, but which later outlined an ominous trend. One account, under the family LLC, displayed regular withdrawals that paralleled purchases and expenditures exclusively for Robyn Brown's household. Not shared family vacation or grocery shopping, but private tutors for her kids, home improvements, even the acquisition of new furniture just a few months after Christine had initiated separation proceedings. There were murmurs in the courtroom when one particular transaction was mentioned, a $6,000 charge under holiday surprise. Christine's lawyer pointed out that it was charged to the family's communal fund, and all the money went to gifts for Robyn's kids. Christine herself had apparently gotten nothing that year. No gift, no card, no phone call from Kody. And then there was the sentence that appeared to cause even the judge to shift uncomfortably in his chair. This wasn't just financial favoritism, the attorney stated. It was neglect, systematic, sustained, and personal. And it hurt not only Christine, but the children she raised with Mr. Brown. Kody remained motionless, hands formed into fists, face flushed bright red. He shook his head ever so slightly, muttering to his attorney, but did not interrupt. Not yet. The second stage of the testimony turned to child support, or more accurately the accused absence thereof. Christine's lawyers outlined exacting descriptions of what she herself had spent money on during the past few years. Doctor's bills, school materials, clothing, after-school activities. Every receipt seemed like a confession, a personal secret laid bare, and each one described a father who, at least from her perspective, had withdrawn, gradually, not only his money, but his presence. For the audience that had witnessed Christine smile in spite of suffering on camera, it was a disconcerting shock to see her so composed and calculating in court. But the people around her said that this was not new. This was the Christine who had been there way before she left. The mom, the guardian, the woman who had been pushed too far, and finally realized she deserved better. Then arrived the time when everything appeared to change. Christine's lawyer faced the bench and asked that one more party be subpoenaed to testify at a subsequent hearing. That person's name? Robyn Brown. The room's atmosphere instantly altered. Robyn wasn't there for this session, but her absence spoke louder than words. Christine's team assumed she knew secrets about how family money had been spent. And if Robyn was compelled to testify, they said, it could reveal all that Kody had fought so hard to keep under wraps, including possibly secret bank accounts and side deals never revealed to the other wives. Kody finally had his say then. This is absurd, he said. We never worked like that. We were like family. But even as he said it, there was something fragile in his voice, something that didn't quite match the energy he once used to lead family meetings, or declare himself the head of the household. Here in this courtroom, there was no couch to lean on. No cameras to appeal to, just questions and facts. The judge, to his credit, remained impartial but firm. He asked if Kody could provide documentation to refute the claim. Kody's attorney said they would need more time. Christine's attorney simply said, "We've had enough time." And that's when the judge said something that made every head turn. This court has had enough. We will need complete financial disclosure from Mr. Brown and anyone associated with the accounts in question. That means any joint account holders, spouses, or business partner. The inference was obvious. Robyn's name wasn't simply going to be named. She was going to be dragged into the middle of it. What is so unusual about this case, so distressing, so engaging, is that it's not merely a matter of money. It's a matter of the gradual disintegration of a vision peddled to millions of television viewers. The Brown family spoke from platforms, authored books, and did interviews on love and harmony. But now, here they were, fractured, cracked, laid bare. And at the heart of it all was Kody, the erstwhile proud father of 18. The man who promised that love was to be multiplied, not divided. But in the court's eye, love wasn't the matter. Accountability was. Christine's case is not simply an individual crusade. It's a message, a stand, a moment in time when one woman, once silenced, once marginalized, decided to transform years of emotional labor into legal mobilization. And regardless of how this case plays out, One thing is for certain, the image of Kody Brown that once smiled its way through television screens will never again be viewed the same. For a man who spent decades declaring himself the head of a plural family, Kody Brown was completely unrecognizable, sitting in the defendant's chair, slumped shoulders, eyes scanning every nook and cranny of the courtroom as if he could wish himself out of sight. There was no camera crew present, no circle of wives nodding in approval in the background, no Janelle sitting next to him in quiet devotion, no Meri, trying futilely to hold the family together, no Robyn, muttering affirmations from the couch, only Kody, alone, in a courtroom where the only lens fixed upon him was the unflinching eye of the law. The instant Christine's financial records were exposed for the court to examine, Kody's characteristic confidence began to splinter. Initially he seemed annoyed, even amused. He rolled his eyes, whispered to his lawyer, shook his head in disdain, as if this whole proceeding was merely another inflated dispute blown out of proportion. But when the judge started to listen to Christine's testimony seriously, when the emotional claims gave way to tough financial detail, Kody's demeanor completely shifted. You could almost sense the room stiffen around him, as if the walls were closing in. One spreadsheet at a time. The judge's voice rang out with stern authority. He posed direct queries. Mr. Brown, are you able to affirm who had access to these family accounts? Were the purchases sanctioned by all co-heads of household? Were receipts given to the family council? And abruptly the confident replies ceased. Kody stammered, stumbled, spoke with his lawyer. And when he did answer, the words lacked the conviction fans were accustomed. I thought, at the time we were making the best decision for the family, he muttered. Christine didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her silence screamed louder than his because the truth doesn't have to yell. It just needs a venue to be heard. And that place for Christine had finally come. The court clerk wrote down every word, every hesitation, every sigh. And the deeper Christine's team went, the more Kody's frustration started to show physically. A clench of his jaw, a quick tapping of his fingers on the table, a red flush creeping up his neck. At one point, in a breakdown of the expenses that indicated extravagant spending on Robyn's household and Christine's children reportedly getting virtually nothing, Kody released a bitter laugh and interrupted. Christine always wanted to be a victim, he growled, just loud enough for the courtroom to catch. The attorney stood there, holding the comment in the air. The judge glanced at Kody with a gaze that could freeze stone. This isn't a therapy session, Mr. Brown, the judge snapped. It's a hearing about money. Let's limit our remarks to what happened. That moment, that one scolding was it was no longer Christine versus Kody. It was Kody versus the reality he had worked so desperately to escape. And the truth was gazing back at him in the guise of signed contracts, incomplete paperwork, and decades of disbalance now at last pulled to the open. Christine's attorney brought forth another tide of this time for things bought with shared money for vacation, birthdays, family vacation. But the dates and shipping testified those vacations were only taken by Kody, Robyn, and her children. There were tickets to Disney, renting ski, costly dinner, and Christine's name, and those of her children, never ever appeared in the reservation. The courtroom was quiet, but the message was loud and clear. This was not a man who few monetary mistake. This was a man who was accused of steaming love, attention, and resources to one quadrant of a family that was to be based on equality. And maybe more revealing for work was Kody's silence. He didn't dispute the dinner. He didn't dispute the trips. But what he did was deflect. He blamed the complexity of plural marriage. He blamed miscommunication. He even briefly blamed the pandemic, saying that tensions and logistics got complicated. But Christine's lawyer wasn't accepting. Complexity doesn't account for the attention, Brown, she told him. Your spending priorities were clear. They were documented. And they were financed on money intended for all your wives, not one. It was at that moment that the courtroom seemed less like a court of law and more like a mirror held up to the holster wives drama. The crowd, legal team, family members watching, even a handful of off-duty press, started to buzz. Because no matter how much you hated or loved Kody Brown, you couldn't help but witness a man lose hold of the tale he'd scripted so long. There was a brief break as Christine's lawyer presented one last item of evidence of the day. A private journal entry, submitted willingly by herself. It wasn't some overwrought letter or tearful diatribe, just a straightforward note. 3 years old. I purchased truly school supplies today. Kody didn't ask about them, didn't even offer to. He was at Robyn, again. The judge read it in silence, then set it aside without remark.
But the mood in the room had already. It was no longer simply about money. It was about memory, about the burden of years lived quietly, obediently, while waiting for a father and husband who never delivered. Kody, for his part, appeared visibly shaken now. His eyes weren't angry, they were far away, perhaps realizing that no amount of explaining could erase the evidence piled against. Not in court, not in the eyes of Christ, not in the hearts of children. His lawyer asked for a recess. The judge consented, but not before ordering a turn and reminding the parties that further disclosure, especially regarding household budget, cash payments, vacation records on joint accounts. And just as the judge rose, he delivered a final warning. This court is interested in Mr. Brown. Not versions of it. If further discrepancies arise, the repercussions will That was all. A gavel fall, a curt nod, and the room had Christine left, no smile, no grandiose gesture, only the same quiet strength. Kody sat there for another couple of seconds, frozen, as if he was still attempting to work out how this day had gotten so far beyond him, because control was what it was always about. And for the very first time, it wasn't his anymore. Outside the courthouse, a handful of Sister Wives fans stood across peering over the metal railing, whispering some of them even sobbing. They weren't merely observing a courtroom, they were witnessing the great narrative they'd been emotionally attached. And when Kody finally emerged outside, head down, lips folded a thin line, not one fan uttered him, not one. The courtroom hummed participant as all waited for the next session to start. Given the defense Brown, and stern warnings by the judge and the stakes higher than still no one was prepared for what would happen. With quiet, composed confidence, Christine Brown stepped in the witness box, and with a big fat binder on her arm, her hair was pulled back, her eyes level, and her voice, when she did, was steady, not cold, not belligerent, just steady. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for. The attorney didn't waste any. Christine, take the court their financial knowledge to Mr. Brown during the past. Christine nodded soft. For most of that time, she started. We didn't function like a normal couple. Everything we did, money-wise, was to. That was the. We weren't supposed to have. She stood there and gazed at Kody for a second, not in rage, but as if to silently ask, why did you violate that trust? In that silence, fans everywhere leaned closer, hearts raced. Crispin the binder turned it to face the courtroom. Page after handwritten bank receipts and shared household budget. And then came the bombshell. Christine pulled out his canceled checks, all signed by Kody, all made out to Robyn Brown. The amounts weren't small. $4,000, $6,700. One check was $15,000, labeled personal expense. Christine's lawyer clarified. Were any of the expenses discussed you or the other wives before they were issued? No, Christine said. We were told the money was tight, that we couldn't afford braces for our daughter. But somehow there was enough for Robyn to redecorate. A ripple passed the courtroom. Kody looked pale. His lawyer attempted to reject, but the judge waved him off. The witness the judge said. This wasn't just financial mismanagement, it was betrayal in black and Christine's voice cracked, not from, but from sheer exhaustion. For years, she said, we were told to put family, and we did. We were detailed births by Kody, school events he never attended, medical bill covered, all while Kody was, according to these documents, spending family on luxury watches, private lessons for Robyn, and even a weekend spa had never heard of. And I wasn't asking, he added. I was just asking, sometimes powered without screaming. At this junction, Kody fidgeted, arms nodded, but he remained silent. Christine wasn't done. She addressed the judge and spoke that sent shivers down the spines of everyone who was watching. I'm not here because I hate, here because I need to defend what's left. Then she pulled out a typed letter, one she had sent Kody years ago. In it, to sit down with fair budget. She'd asked to step up. She never got a response. Cody's attorney tried to object, but this time the judge spoke finally. If Mr. Brown didn't speak, the air in the courtroom, you could hear the scratch of courtroom. The journalist in the back row free typing. And then Christine dropped the final test. I found out later, she said slowly, that Robyn had a separate credit card tied to our one-eye. Gasps echo. The judge held up his quiet. The Christine clerk the last. A statement of thousands of dollars charges. None of them ever, never. The judge read it slowly. He didn't say much, but his eyes said the whole. This was more than a custody fight, or this was a financial. And lies when flame morphed the brightest. Kristen was in the witness stand. And as she walked back to, there was feeling that some irrevocable had just, not in court, but in the story that once thought they knew about their. The Brown family had long been but a plural family struggling to make it, but now the cracks were, they were. Kody sat silent, like a man who had just watched an avalanche. Because Christine's were, they weren't venom, they were precise, and they were backed by facts. Facts that had After a Cody's recovered, he claimed the documents lacked, that Christine had selected, but it was too late. The courtroom had heard enough.
The judge scheduled a financial audit and requested all family banking activity from the last 5 years, including communications between Kody and Robyn regarding personal expenses. Kody finally spoke up, his voice low and shaky. I was trying to take care of everyone. I didn't mean to exclude Christine, but the damage was already done. Christine's attorney responded clearly. Intent doesn't matter here. The record does. Because in court, intention can't erase impact. And the impact? It had been delivered like a hammer. Christine's testimony had done more than hurt Kody's defense. It had rewritten the narrative entirely. From a woman scorned to a mother defending her children's rights. From a quiet wife to a bold truth-teller. She hadn't thrown a tantrum. She hadn't made dramatic accusations. She'd simply opened her files, her memories, and her heart, and let the evidence speak. Outside the courtroom, Christine refused to give a statement. But her expression said everything. Relieved, empowered, and finally, seen. Reporters swarmed around her attorney. Fans posted in real time on social media. Christine just flipped the whole case. She brought the receipts, literally. Kody's legacy is crumbling right before our eyes. And somewhere behind the courthouse glass, Kody stood watching it all unfold. The man who once commanded a plural family now found himself isolated in a courtroom that was no longer his domain. Not a single one of his former wives had shown up for him. Not Meri, not Janelle, not even Robyn. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than any testimony. As Christine's car drove away, and Kody disappeared into a side hallway with his legal team, the audience, in the courtroom and online, realized something. This wasn't just the unwinding of a marriage. This was the unwinding of a myth. The idea that Kody was the glue, the head, the heart of the family was gone. Christine's quiet voice and steady facts had done what no tell-all interview or reality show edit ever could. She told the truth. And now, it was time for the consequences to begin. Kody Brown had always been known for one thing: his confidence. On Sister Wives, we've seen him lead his family with swagger, command attention in group discussions, and speak with authority in every confessional. But on this day, inside that cold, silent courtroom, none of that confidence was left. After Christine's powerful testimony in the previous session, the air around Kody felt different. He wasn't angry. He wasn't combative. He sat, defeated, slouched in his chair, head dipped, hands locked together, as if it had all come catching up to him at last. And then what followed made it all come tumbling down. The court clerk indicated that an unexpected witness had been granted permission to make a brief statement. There was a silence. All eyes turned. And then, the door opened. Janelle Brown entered the courtroom. Her arrival sent a ripple through the crowd. Even Kody jumped. No one had anticipated that Janelle would take the stand. In fact, everyone thought she was avoiding it altogether. But there she was. She strode to the stand with purposeful quiet, carrying nothing but a letter in her hand, folded. She did not sit immediately. She glanced at Kody, then at the judge, and spoke softly. "I won't be long. I just need to read this." When the truth is told by someone who's always remained quiet, it cuts deeper than any yell ever might. The judge nodded, and Janelle opened the paper. It was a letter she had written to Kody a year or so before she had made the decision to move apart. But she never sent it. Until today. Her voice shook ever so slightly as she started. "Kody, I spent more than 20 years of my life believing in you. Believing in the family we were creating. Believing in the promise that we were equal, that we were visible, heard, and worth the same. But along the way, that belief became a burden." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "I saw you appear for Robyn in ways that you never appeared for me. I saw you dipping into our communal pot to provide for her a lifestyle we couldn't possibly afford. And I was silent, because I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to be the bitter wife. I thought perhaps you were having a phase. But that phase became routine. And that routine shattered this family." Sometimes the strongest testimony doesn't belong to lawyers or ledgers, but from the heart of someone who loved and lost. Janelle finally sat down, placed the letter on her lap, and took a breath. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "I'm here for truth, for closure, for the sake of the children still asking why their dad stopped showing up." Kody's face had turned crimson. His eyes were red. He looked like a man unraveling from the inside out. And when finally he did speak, voice raspy, hardly above a whisper, he said, I didn't know it felt that way. The judge regarded him serenely, but it did. And now you do. What ensued was something even the most experienced court reporters had not anticipated. Kody Brown wept. Not tear up, not wipe away a drop. He became undone. Head in hands, shoulders shaking, his cries rang out in the courtroom for almost a full minute. Christine and Janelle sat in silence, not smirking, not self-satisfied, simply there, because they had already wept those tears, years before. Regret comes quickly, but healing much later. Kody finally lifted his head and addressed the judge directly. I was trying to hold everything together, he said. I figured if I could keep one part of the family together, maybe it would give me time to repair the rest.